Sunday school leaders. We are in our final week in the series entitled Ready, Ministering Life to Those in Crisis. And this week we are looking at the topic of when porn devastates. That's a subject you really don't hear a lot about in churches. Perhaps it's an embarrassing topic. Maybe some people or some churches feel it doesn't apply to me or to us. Other people may think, oh, it's a teenage problem. We don't need to address. We'll let the youth minister address that. However, statistics tell us that this is a $12 billion industry, pornography is, in the United States, and that at least half of the men in our churches have some kind of pornography problem. So to me, this is a topic that needs to be addressed. Our lesson text is out of 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 3 through 8. Paul, of course, is writing to the church in Thessalonica. This is a Greek city. It's similar to Corinth. There's several different religious cults that are there in the city, and sex was a part of the worship of those cults. And so this is what Paul is addressing in verses 4 and 5 when he says, "Control yourselves and don't have the passionate lust of the pagans." So I'm sure we can agree and say, okay, we should be true to our marriage vows. We shouldn't have sex outside of marriage. But what's wrong with looking at what we would have termed in my day girly magazines, or seeing a skin flick, or seeing some images on the internet? What is actually wrong with that? What does the Bible have to say about that? In verse 3 of our text, Paul says to avoid sexual immorality. And that English term, sexual immorality, comes from the Greek word that's in the original text, porneia. And porneia, of course, is where we get our word pornography. Now, Paul is not telling us to avoid pornography. He's telling us to avoid sexual immorality. But that's an interesting correlation, I think. But let's look at some other things. Let's look at the biological difference in men and women. We know that men are sexually stimulated visually, and women are more so through sounds, smells, touch, emotionally relevant stimulation. Generally speaking, that's why when men cheat on their wives, they're doing so with that young, hot-looking secretary. And when wives are cheating on their husbands, it's usually with the guy in the office who is sensitive to her, who listens to her, who understands her. We see this demonstrated in the Bible in the Song of Solomon. The man calls the woman beautiful, comments on her physical appearance 11 times in the book. The woman, however, only calls the man handsome, only comments on his physical appearance 1 time. The man describes the woman in physical detail 5 times, while the woman does this only once. This is where the man describes the woman that her neck is like a tower and the breasts are like 2 fawns. That must have been some cultural reference, because I have no idea what that means. But anyway, so the man is much more physical, much more visual in his description. However, the woman speaks of her heart, of her emotions toward the man 7 times in the book, while the man only speaks of a similar situation twice. So you see that correlates even in the Bible. But what about in the lives of our youth? What revs the engine of a middle school boy or a high school guy? It's the physical appearance. It's the pictures. It's those magazines, the online images. That's what, like I said, revs their engine. Well, what about gals? What about those middle school girls or those high school gals? What does the same thing for them? Well, it's those romantic themes in films, in books, in magazines. It's the emotional. That's why the Twilight series was so popular. We come on into the adult years, and of course this still holds true. Men stimulated visually. That's why the swimsuit issue of Sports Illustrated is so popular. That's why pornography is such a, I think it's 90 or 95% male consumer for that industry. Women, of course, we think chick flick, romance novels. It's no coincidence, I don't think, that the 50 Shades of Grey has just come out. It was such a popular book series among women. Now, knowing that that's how God has wired us, that men are visually stimulated and that women are more emotionally through sounds and smells and touch stimulated. Knowing that's how God has wired us. Satan, of course, takes those God-given desires and the way that we're wired and perverts that. It doesn't matter if it's food, if it's sex, if it's the need for achievement, whatever those innate desires are, he takes and perverts those. And he says, don't be satisfied. There's something better. There's something better out there than what God has provided. And it started with Eve in the garden. So pornography is a matter of the heart. In my personal opinion, of course we have no way to prove this, I think the Pharisees may have made an exception for pornography since there was no physical adultery involved. But what did Jesus say in Matthew 5:28? He said, if you look lustfully at a woman, you've committed adultery with her. So when men look at those pictures, whether it's online, in a magazine, in a film, and it stirs up lust in their hearts, or when women read the novel and they picture themselves being taken by the muscle-bound guy on the cover, and that stirs up lust in their hearts, that's not being satisfied with what God has given you. Let's take our cue from Job. In the book that bears his name, in Job 31:1, he says, I have made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at a young woman. So that's a personal responsibility that we can take, is to not do that. But is there some ways that we can help each other out? Women, I will just be honest with you here. Wearing the low-cut top and the high skirt does not do a thing for the guy's holiness. Okay? And guys, please be careful when you compliment, when you touch a woman who's not your wife. Just be very careful along those lines. I know we can be friends and we can say nice things, but we just need to be very careful of how we do that. I think it's interesting that our youth, our 6th through 12th graders, they are on a completely different lesson series. However, this Sunday, they are on the exact same topic. They're talking about pornography. And so parents, if you have teenagers that go to Connect, to go to our Sunday school time, talk at lunch or throughout the week about this. I mean, this is a topic that needs to be addressed. There are so many other avenues that we leaders can take with this lesson. There was a GQ article that I've seen posted on Facebook just in the last couple of weeks, Gentleman's Quarterly, that gives reasons why guys should not view porn. I thought that was a very interesting article coming from GQ. You can look at the statistics of pornography and what it does. You can look at other angles as well. There's the sex trafficking angle. There's the biological pleasure center, and once you stimulate that, it's almost like a drug. You need more and more and bigger doses and harder stuff to get that same high. Another just very practical reason is that you are supporting filmed prostitution. You have actresses, actors who are being paid to have sex. That's filmed prostitution, and so by viewing porn, you are supporting that. So that's just a very practical thing, I believe. Leaders, I would encourage you to be very sensitive with this topic. I know it's easy to either shy away from it or joke about it, but there's a place there in the middle that we need to hit home with this topic. There's probably people in your class, especially if you have a class with guys in it that are struggling with this. Please encourage them to visit with someone they trust about this topic, whether that's one of our ministers or somebody else. I'd like to suggest some books to you as well. Steve Audubon has several books. Every Young Man's Battle, Every Young Woman's Battle, Every Man's Battle, Every Woman's Battle. This whole series that deals with this topic for men and women both. So next week we're going to start an 8-week session on the life of Christ. This will take us through Easter up through April 19th. I hope you've put a lot of thought and prayer into your lesson this week. I'm listing right now some links for you that some things I've already talked about the statistics, about the GQ article that you might want to reference as well. So prepare well, have a great lesson, and I'll be back next week. Thanks.